Hello, listeners, and welcome to Youth Ventures podcast, PDX Business Spotlight. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this episode of PDX Business Spotlight. Today, we are so excited to welcome Amy Zhang, who's the founder and owner of Lily Henry Jewelry. So, Amy, could you please go ahead and give an overview of who you are, what your business is about, and how you got started?
Hi, Gauri, and the PDX Business Spotlight by Youth Venture team. Thank you so much for having me. I feel so honored to be here talking with you today. My name is Amy Zhang. I am 34 years old, and I am a recent transplant to Portland from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and I am the founder of Lily Henry Jewelry. Lily Henry Jewelry is all about repurposed, upcycled, and conversion jewelry made using vintage and antique components. I use all kinds of fun things in my pieces, especially old brooches, bar pins, and buttons, but also shoe clips and fur clips, cufflinks and hat pins, all kinds of fun stuff. I do an immense amount of treasure hunting, as I like to call it, and due to the nature of my pieces, having so much history, much of my jewelry is one of a kind. I would never have predicted that I would get into the jewelry industry. In a past life, I worked in the medical field in a really high stress environment that was really difficult to thrive under. 4 years ago, I left that behind and discovered a love of old things through visiting estate sales and eventually working with some of the estate sale companies in Baton Rouge too. Lily Henry Jewelry was born out of a passion project when I discovered that I not only liked jewelry, but was in fact obsessed with it. I started collecting jewelry for myself, and in early 2019, I also began collecting buttons and other pieces and parts, thinking I might do something with that. With the encouragement from a close friend who's a self-professed lifelong jewelry lover, and she had also just started making her own jewelry. I started making jewelry, and eventually my friend and I would also share a booth at pop-up markets to sell our handmade jewelry. I refer to my jewelry as pieces of history because of their age and because many of the pieces I repurpose are over 100 years old.
Wow.
Still pretty obsessed with the Victorian era, but I like them all. I'm really inspired by adornment and all its forms of self-expression. As I repurpose old brooches and bar pins, I think about who might have worn them, for what occasion, and into whose hands were they passed down through the years. I think about the life these pieces have bore witness to and what they still might now that they've been given a new life. Old pieces that have been tucked away in a drawer or cabinet are made new and hopefully will be cherished for years to come.
Wow, Amy, I really love how, first of all, your business is so sustainable and really just supporting the environment with your use of repurposing all these materials to create your jewelry. And also, I love how you started this as a passion and you turned it into such a successful business. And you were able to get support from your friends and family as well. And from their encouragement, it became even more successful.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been really fortunate in that aspect, and I'm so glad that I can keep having fun.
Amy, who or what inspired you to start your business?
Well, the close friend that I mentioned, and also my parents. I'm a child of immigrant parents, and I grew up in the restaurant industry. My parents wanted me to know the culture that I come from. So growing up, I went to Chinese school on the weekends and only spoke Mandarin and Cantonese at home. My parents always had a family restaurant, or we would be between family restaurants. Seeing how hard my parents worked and how much they struggled, I never wanted to be a business owner myself, but now I truly love what I'm doing. I've always enjoyed working with my hands, and it brings me a lot of joy to be able to create beautiful pieces that I can share with others. And I'm really proud to call myself a business owner. My parents chose English names for themselves, and customers from the restaurant would call them Miss Lily or Mr. Henry. So the name Lily is for my mom and Henry for my dad because I want to honor my own history.
Wow, I really love how not only were you able to get like an inspiration from your parents kind of from the beginning, even though you didn't think you would pursue it as a career, it kind of was your inspiration in a way, I guess. But you also chose to like honor them with the name of your business. That's really interesting and really cool.
Yeah, my parents are really important to me. They've made me who I am. And at the same time, the pieces that I work with, they all have their own histories too.
Wow. Amy, how has being a person of color affected your business, either positively or negatively?
Well, I will preface this to say that I have not experienced blatant discrimination toward my business, but it's certainly been a real fear of mine. There is an awareness in everything that I do as an Asian American, as a model minority in the midst of the current pandemic. I've lived in the Deep South, Texas, and Louisiana for most of my life, and that's where I started my business with doing in person markets. But I wasn't doing markets alone. I was vending at markets with a friend who is a white American, and I definitely felt safer because of it, especially with the COVID pandemic and rise in
Mhm.
Asian hate. My partner in life became unemployed at the beginning of the pandemic, and we relocated to Portland for his new job 4.5 months ago. And moving to Portland has been a really positive experience for me. I feel as
Wow.
though I don't stand out here as much because BIPOC businesses are acknowledged, supported, and provided resources.
Wow, Amy, I am so glad that you were not only able to receive like positive support in the South, but also like you recently moved here, and I love that you were able to be welcomed into such an amazing community. Also, how has the pandemic affected your business? Has it had any upsides or downsides? I know you did mention that you were continuing your business during the pandemic and you recently just moved here. How has it affected you overall?
There's definitely been upside, but there were also downsides. I started selling my jewelry in May of 2019, and that was only at in person pop up markets.
Mhm.
When the pandemic started, all the markets were canceled and I wasn't able to do any in person jewelry sales. But I had just opened up an Etsy shop a few weeks before news of the pandemic came, but I'd only added 2 listings and my pictures were, well, they were not very good. Then, through following other jewelry industry social media accounts, I heard about a professional jewelry photographer, Alon Seemich, who
Mhm.
was going to be teaching a new jewelry photography course and that it would be through Zoom. So I signed up and took that course in May of 2020. It was invaluable. I learned so much that I signed up for more of the follow up photography courses. My
Mhm.
images for social media and for my Etsy shop listings are so much better because of what I learned. I also spent a lot of time working on my Etsy shop, adding listings, improving titles, and
Mhm.
SEO. All of that takes so much time. The other silver lining is that I moved to Portland, a place where BIPOC businesses are celebrated. I feel fortunate to have been able to participate in my people's market and to be highlighted in this podcast.
Well, Amy, I am glad that the pandemic did bring a lot of positivity into your life. For example, the switch to online was definitely difficult for so many businesses, but in the end, it provided just another resource for customers to buy right from their home. And I was actually looking at your Etsy shop, and I just wanted to let you know that, like, it's really cool, and all of the pictures are so professionally done. Everything looks so beautiful and pretty. It's perfect in every way.
Oh, thank you so much. That makes me feel really, really good about myself because I spend a lot of time taking pictures, doing the edits, and of course, creating the listings.
And Amy, this might be a bit of a difficult question, but which one of your products is personally your favorite?
Oh gosh, that's so hard because I pick out each piece one at a time. So it's curated, it's all my taste. I will say that I have a lot of favorites. As far as pieces that I've kept for myself, I love a good black and gold combination. So you won't see a photo of the one that I've kept because they're all one of a kind.
Hmm.
But a good black and gold combination, which has like some of that black enamel tracery, I love. But there are also other standout pieces that I love. It's just so hard. They're all different.
So definitely listeners, if you want to check out Lily Henry Jewelry's amazing jewelry, you can go to the link in our podcast description box. It is going to have Amy's website on there, her Etsy shop. So you can go right there and buy from her right now. So, Amy, what advice might you have for young entrepreneurs, especially young entrepreneurs of color? And what are some experiences you could talk about that might motivate or inspire them?
Well, I know that it can be scary to start something new and something from scratch. So, first, I want to say that if you don't try something, then you'll never know. Second, is to give it 6 months. It doesn't have to be that exact time frame, but if there's a project you've been thinking about doing, make a plan to try it out for 6 months and see what happens. Take notes along the way so you can track your progress. At the end of 6 months, see where you are, where you've ended up at the end of those 6 months. Then look back at where you started and think about whether you want to keep going. Are you proud of what you've accomplished in 6 months? Do you want to be where you were 6 months ago? Or do you want to make another plan for the next 6 months? And that's something that I continue to ask myself as I continue to grow my business. It was just like when the pandemic hit, and I was like, well, now I've been thinking about going online, and I sort of did, but
Mhm.
I didn't have very many listings up. And so then I added more listings. And, when I look 6 months later, well, I definitely made more sales because I added new listings. When I wasn't happy with like my photos, I knew I wanted my photos to get better. So after taking that course, which you don't have to take a course, but I improved my pictures, and 6 months later they're way better than they were before I took that course. So yeah, definitely give things a shot, and wherever you are now, you'll still be there if you do nothing. But if you do nothing, you don't know where you might be in 6 months.
Amy, definitely great guidance for all of the young entrepreneurs out there. Thank you so much for that. Also, Amy, how can people continue to support your business?
People can support my business by engaging with me on social media, through my Etsy shop, and by visiting me at in-person pop-up events. Please follow at Lily Henry Jewelry on Instagram and Facebook. Be sure to like, save, share, and comment on my posts and stories to help my business be seen more and get more exposure on those platforms. You can find my shop, Lily Henry Jewelry, on Etsy. Hit the heart button to favorite the shop so that you'll know when I add new listings. Please, please come by my booth at future pop-up markets and let me know that you heard about me from this podcast. I'm always happy to talk a bit of shop and jewelry history with anyone who will listen.
Wow. So definitely listeners, we will be linking all of Amy's social media links in the podcast description box once again. So please continue to support her in any way you can, even if it's simply by liking a photo. We will also be linking her Etsy shop once again in the podcast description box so you can buy from her directly. And also by following her on social media, you can find out when her next pop-up markets are and go meet her in person. Finally, Amy, are there any special projects or anything else you would like to plug?
I'm going to be working on setting up my own website in the next few months, so definitely be on the lookout for that. I'll still be on Etsy, but I do want to work on having my own space online. And if any listeners know someone interested in carrying some of my pieces for wholesale, I would love to hear from them too.
Perfect. And whenever you do get a new website, we will be sure to update all of the links in the description box that we have and our listeners as well, so they can find the new place to purchase your products from. Amy, finally, are there any last things that you wanted to say?
Yeah, just thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for highlighting BIPOC-owned small businesses. I hope your listeners enjoyed listening to this podcast and hearing my story.
Thank you, Amy. It's been an honor. That is it from PDX Business Spotlight. And listeners, please be sure to join us in the next episode. Thank you for listening to PDX Business Spotlight by Youth Venture, and we hope to see you in the next episode.